today we will be going to discuss something about the queen of the sea, those are the corals. So these corals comprises of the phylum Cnidaria, especially they are the exclusive elements of the class Anthozoa. They exhibits extensive diversity and the forms. They are composed of hard skeleton of calcium carbonate, and these groups of animals are extensively they are seen within the seabed, which are almost submerged or having a low depth under the sea. Now, regarding the structure of these groups of animals, they are found mostly colonial and they exhibit extensive diversity within the seabed. Now, the next we will be coming to the structure of these corals. The corals, when they are in the unit form, they are called as the corallite. So now we will be concentrating on the structure of the corallite. Now you can see a cross-sectional view of such corallite, which comprises of certain vertical ridges which are called as the theca. The outer lining that is comprised of the cup-shaped structure, they are called the theca. There are some ridges inside these portions, cross sections you can see, they are called as the sclerosepta. Within the inner ends of this sclerosepta, they are fused to form a central mass, or regularly called as the columella. Now, coming to the types of the corals, depending on certain criteria, we are differentiating these corals in different structure. Depending on the habits and the associated structure, these corals can be differentiated within the solitary coral and the colonial coral. Now coming to the solitary coral, this you can see example are the fungia, which are found mainly in the Indonesian countries. Here the solitary ones have only one disc or cup, which is almost a mushroom shaped structure. They are very small in measurement, almost 5 millimeter to 25 millimeter in diameter, and they often lie loose in the substratum, or might be somewhat they might be stuck to the bottom. The next one is the colonial coral. As we have said in the earlier opening session that the corals may be solitary or colonial. Generally, mostly they are the colonials. So now we will be discussing about this colonial coral. Here we can see that they form low flat plates or spherical masses or cup-like or vase-like structure. They may be branched. This branch may be having a long slender branches and end up with long slender branches, and these corals usually reproduces asexually from a sexually produced polyps. Now the very common examples that I can show you in the picture, there's Acrospora and Tubipora. Now, depending on the structural organization, these corals can be divided into three main types. That is, one is imperforate, perforate, or the fungid one. Now, coming to the imperforate one, as the name comprises, you can see that imperforate coral, that means they have a compact theca and a sclerocepta. So the structure is very compact, and they are composed of a solid mass. The example is Meandrina here. As the name goes, of the perforate coral, so you can see the common example is Madrepora, and the outer portions or outer the shell is very loose constructions. Now coming to the fungid one, this is they may be either perforate or as well as the imperforate one. They have a laminated septa which are joined by each other by synapticuli. The very common examples are the mushroom corals that you can see in this presentation. The third one, that is depending on the microscopic structure, the corals are again divided into poreless coral and perforate coral. Now coming to the poreless coral, here we can see that the outer surface is almost solid, so that is the sclerocepta and the outer thecal portion is almost solid one. The example is the flabellum. The colorful pictures displays the examples here. Now coming to the perforate one, here as you know, the outer structure having a delicate meshwork of calcium carbonate. The examples are the Madrepora. So you can see the examples displayed here. Now, do everywhere these corals grow under the sea? Obviously not. Depending on certain criteria under the sea, the corals are deposited and the growth is facilitated. Now coming to these factors that are that helps or that enhances the coral growth, the number one or the prime factor is the temperature. So what would be the temperature of the sea water that facilitates the growth? Neither too hot nor too cold water. So the temperature must be within 18 to 27 degrees Celsius of the sea water. That means almost the temperate zone of the earth is very favorable for their growth. The next point comes here as the depth of the sea. Do the depth, which is very much, helps to grow? No. The shallow water, or rather than the intertidal zones with very strong, not very strong current of water, do facilitate the growth. So the depth of the shoreline as well as the seawater must not be more than 50 fathom. This helps the deposition of the animals here, as well as the other animals that are accumulated within this coral forest will facilitate the rise of the mold. Now in this picture you can see that not only the corals, but there are some other organisms that are taking shelter. So if the depth is much more under the sea level, so the growth will take much time to come up and show up their beauty. Next point is the light. The light or the sunlight, the penetration of the sunlight is a very important factor, as because this sunlight will be helping to grow the zooxanthellae within this mold or the ridge of the animals. Now that means we can obviously understand that the penetration of the sunlight must be in such level that the photosynthesis within this group of sea plant enhances. If not, the penetration, if it is very deep, the light cannot penetrate within the sea water, so obviously the growth will be not much, and obviously the other functions we cannot be exhibiting their full strength. Now coming to the turbidity, obviously a turbid sea water or a turbid water doesn't facilitate all this growth, and obviously the light permeability will not be so that obviously the coral growth will be diminished. Salinity, obviously the salinity plays an important role, and the salinity, there is a optimum salinity that will help the growth of these animals. Now coming to the water current, if the water is moving in a very fast current, then this growth will be not enhanced, as because they will be washed out. They cannot have a hold fast within their substratum, so they will be washed out, and obviously no growth will be facilitated. And the last but the most important thing is the animal association. As we have said that this growth of these corals will be a continuous process. If the lower strata of the coral animals, which are sessile, that means they are having a hold fast within the substratum, when they dies, again what happens, the next set of coral grow on this dead group. Then again when this dies, then the third strata grows. So all is a continuous process, and they have a platform on the dead group. And not only that, these animals, when they are accumulating in a cumulative effect, all the animals, sea animals, small sea animals, that is the fish, that might be the amphibians, that might be the mollusca, echinoderms, and all these things, they take the shelter in this group, in this mold, as just like some birds, animals, and other living organisms take shelter in the forest tree. Just they are the rainforest of the sea bed. So the animal association is a very important criteria for the fast growth of this coral. Now we will be peeping into a much more interesting part of this study, that is the coral reef. Many of us have gone through the Andaman Nicobar Islands and Lakka Minicoy Islands and so on. If we have enough pocket money, so we can go into Bahama Island, or even we can go for a brief discussion, a brief show in the Australian islands to have a look of this fantastic portion of the world. So now what is coral reef? Coral reef is a ridge or mound of limestone which have its upper surface near the sea level. That means that might be rising during the intertidal time, that means within the low tide, and it will be submerged in the high tide region. Now have a close look on this zonation pattern. As I have already told you that the 27° north to south latitude of the equator proves a very good portion or good environment for their growth. Now here we can see the red highlighted areas that proves to be a very good home for these corals to grow, as because here the water temperature is not so much, and obviously they are having a smooth water current, not so high water current, which will be facilitating their growth. So this red zone part are the mostly growth area of the corals. Now we will be coming to the types of the coral reefs. There are three types: the fringing reef, barrier reef, and the atolls. Now coming to the fringing reef pattern. Now as the figure goes displayed here, you can see that there are certain zoned part. One is the outer reef or the fore reef, then the reef crest, and near to the shore, that is the inner reef or the reef flat. So as we can have this is a cross section of the land portion that is going to the sea one. So from the outer portion we can see that the outer reef, that is the most deeper part of the ocean. Now ultimately the sea is going within the shore or the shore portion, where we can see the water is coming and going within the inner flat or inner reef flat portion. Here this portion, that is the inner reef and the reef crest, is the cradle of the growth of the reef coral reefs. Now this is a fantastic picture of the fringing reef example that is found in the Mauritius. Next we will be concentrating on the next popular type of the reef, that is the barrier reef. Here we can see the land portion adjacent to the some volcanic islands which is submerged within the sea, and you can see that just in between the volcanic island there are encircled portions that these land portions are almost submerged within the sea level, that within the time it comes up within the due to their growth time they come up on the sea level, and the reef portions are shown. So in between this reef there are some portions that are called as the lagoon, and here is a beautiful picture of the Great Barrier Reef of Australia. We would hope we will someday go there to have a close look. The next much important one is the atoll. Here we can see that the volcanic islands, there are many volcanic islands spread in the oceans and seas of our world. So these just beside their volcanic islands, due to their eruption, some things will be coming up according to their volcanic eruptions, and then there will be constant deposition of the animals along with the soil and other materials, which will be ultimately coming up to the sea level as there will be some growth within this circumference area. Now this forms a atoll. So within this atoll, in the middle portion of this atoll, you can see, or we can assume that there will be the depth of the sea will be much less, and they form a lagoon within this. They are horseshoe shaped actually, and they have a central lagoon. Whereas in case of the barrier reef, we have found that the lagoons are not located centrally but in the outside portions. This is an example of atoll reef in Bikini Island. Now there are certain theories regarding this coral reef formation. There are 5 or 6 theories, but the most common or the most important theories are Darwin done a subsidence theory, Semper-Murray solution theory, submerged bank theory, and the very common one an widely accepted one is the Daly-Glacial theory. Now coming to the Darwin-Dana subsidence theory, this theory has its origin from the observations of the most renowned scientist of our biological science, that is Darwin, during his voyage in HMS Beagle. Regarding this theory, the fringing reef arises from other types of the coral reef. The fringing reef is found on the shores which are inclined downward. So regarding this first figure, you can see that the fringing reef is formed on the shores which are inclined downward, and sometimes the shore between the developing fringing reef and the landmass sinks. So this confirms as a barrier reef. Now this barrier reef and the other main land masses will have a seawater, continuous washing of the seawater, and in case the main land is an island and the other portions will be surrounded around, that will form as atoll. So in brief, according to Darwin-Dana subsidence theory, the land fringing reef will be turned into atoll. Now coming to the second most popular theory, that is the Semper-Murray solution theory. Here, after certain explorations and going through the different studies regarding the life of sea, Sir John Murray advanced a view that the coral grow on the highest peak of the land mound, and these depositions of the deposition of sediments bring them to an optimum level, which will be reaching the top of the sea. And now this barrier reef will be formed and the atolls may be produced for the better growth of the corals. So regarding this, here we can see that some portions which are submerged. This in the second picture, the mold is growing, and then in the third one we can see that there is a cup-shaped structure which will be forming a lagoon in between, and they will be having a shallow sea water. The depth of the sea water there is not so much, so they will be forming a shallow sea water, and they will be forming a lagoon. How? Now there is a theory regarding this, that there might be some reactions within them which will be dissolving the central part. How? That is a big query, and we cannot go through it because there is no such experiments done how this thing has been occurred. Now coming to the next one, that is the submerged bank theory. Here we can follow that they are the coral reefs that are found or that are formed on some of the peak of the landmass. Now the growth is continuous and the deposition will be continuous on that typical portions. Rather than, not only this, the sea level or the sea water will be gradually coming down due to the ice formation, and the sea level will be coming down, so the mold formation will be begin much faster, so that they can reach up to the top level. Now this theory denies any transition of the common types of the reef into different types. So this is a very plain and simple theory, that the submerging of the things will be coming up to the sea water level, and there is no such theory, no such hypothesis put forward so that the one reef will be converted to other one. Naturally, when this reef has been formed, we can see that there is in between portion again one which is forming the lagoon, and here the depth of the sea is much lesser, as the lagoon is forming, just you have a tea in a cup which is submerged in a bowl, so you can usually assume how the feature will be looking like. Now, the last or the most accepted theory is the Daly-Glacial control theory. As the name comes, the glacial control theory, obviously we can assume this the rising part of the ice edge which will diminish the water level. Now, according to this theory, the last part of the glacial period, formation of the ice caps lowering the level of the sea water, which will be always facilitate the formation of the coral reefs. Here we can see not only the depositions will be going on, the green mass will be going on, and also the sea water level is coming down. So you can see in the first picture, that is, if it is marked as 1, 2, in the next phase you can see that the second phase 2 has already come down when the growth of the coral has been reached up. Now, according to all these theories, the formations of atolls and all this, the submarine eruptions also sometimes facilitate these growths. Now, let us come to another important one, that how this sclerotogenesis or the growth of the corals is been facilitated. The specific algae that plays an important role, that is the ZOOXANTHALLAE. They play a fundamental role in the inorganic growth of the coral reefs. This is the reaction here, and how the calcium carbonate is deposited. It has, in a continuous method, has been seen in the reactions given here. Now, by this time we have got enough knowledge that how these corals are growing, what they are, and how their growth has been facilitated, and how they are growing now. What are their theories regarding their put forward. So now, the very important and almost in the last part of our discussion, that is what is the importance of the coral reef? If they will not in existence, is there any loss to mankind? Obviously, as it is important, as the trees are important in our aerial mode of life, obviously these group of animals associated with the plants are very important in the total livelihood of our earth. Now, first of all, they provide intense biodiversity that is found in the sea water. Also, they protect and they give home to different species of small animals and plants. Obviously, they control the dissolved carbon dioxide portions in the sea water, which is very important for the life of the animals as well as the plants. And as we know all, that they protect the coast of the continents to a very large extent. Now, obviously, the human being are the greediest animal of the world. So we ourselves is a major threat to these coral reefs. We use to visit these portions, we used to break something and come and take those things to our personal collections, and that is the main important thing, that we are destroying the forest of the sea. Now, these depositions and the sediments of the soil, water pollution, we are all draining all these things, all the wastewater, the water, or the other chemicals that are drained from the factories and all the things, and what is the method of dispersing those things, those wastewater, waste things, go and deposit in the water, sea water, river water, everywhere. So the very common thing, we deposit in the river bed is polluting, and this polluted water is now run through the sea and they are deposited in the oceans. Now this is a very what we will say, that is a very greediness of our thing, that for our betterment we are always polluting, we are always degrading the total livelihood of the earth. Poisoning is again another one. So not only that I am poisoning you and you are going to die, not only that, we are poisoning in such a manner so that we can have a huge catch of fish, huge catch of other animals, so that they can benefit our bank balance. So this poisoning is also a very threat to this group of animals. Overfishing, always, obviously we are poisoning and we are dynamiting, we are using some certain materials so that we can get a huge catch. We are going to have a trawler, fish trawler in the sea, and we have a mindset that I have to earn this much, so that I have to gain this much. So by doing this, just to meet up our greed, just to meet up our need, we are overfishing, which is very injurious to the ecosystem of the sea. Now coral bleaching is also one, what we do, all the chemicals that are deposited in the water, they ultimately form the bleaching, and so the corals are losing their beauty, color, and the tourism is affecting. Over tourism is also a very important one, so that the tourists will be going, the population will be going there, they will be having not their equal share of things. What we will be having, what they will be having, they will be depriving. The tourists will be going, they will be intruding into their homes, they will be breaking these things, they will be picking up these things, and the tourists will be going back. Again, second set of tourists will be coming, and now they will be having their life disturbed. So this over tourism and all those things should be avoided to meet up the coral threats. Now, as I have told about this coral bleaching, so you can see the first one, the dark one, is the actual color of the coral. After the bleaching, what will they have? They will be looking like they are having a makeup with a fair and lovely one. Next one, you can see that the partial bleaching, that in the crown of the thorns, sea star, they have an alopecia, they have a baldness of their thorns. So coming to the last one, that is that this rainforest should be conserved. This rainforest should be conserved just to have our mankind a betterment, the creations of the marine reserves, and to create an alternative livelihood that will provide the people who are depending on these ecotourisms. So coming to the conclusion, here we can see, so just we have to have a better guard of these coral reefs, which will be just having a splendid flower garden. They are just having a splendid flower garden, as we are having the rainforest in our aerial land life. They are also having their diversity within under the sea. Not only that, they are also protecting the coastline during the tsunami, when in those portions this coral reefs were persisting, the damage was much less. You have gone through the message that wherever this coral growth was good and enough, the damage was much less during the tsunami or the sea storms. So for the betterment of us, for the betterment of the human mankind, these forests should be preserved. Thank you.